Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Here with your hosts, Jacob Smedley.
Sam Betts.
Justin Reedhammer.
And Peter Amarante.
Our topics today include MLB All-Star rosters are here, reserves, starters, some names added in the last minute. The game is coming up this week. Sam has a list of some guys that were snubbed. We'll take a listen here in just a moment, but we also have the top 5 NFL GMs, which we've been all waiting for, the masterminds behind these great teams. Justin has a list, and he'll give it to us. We'll debate. We'll go back and forth. We'll converse. We'll talk about that later on. But first, Sam, MLB All-Star lists coming out. What is going on, my friend?
Yeah, Jake, the All-Star game's right around the corner here. At the time of this recording, we're going to be having the All-Star game on Tuesday. We also have the Home Run Derby on Monday coming up. So all the All-Star festivities are happening. Uh, this has been a really weird kind of selection process because we had a lot of people selected and a lot of players are dropping out, so we're having some different replacements here and there. We had Zach Wheeler drop out. He wants to focus on the second half of the season. We had Jose Ramirez drop out on the for the Guardians on the American League side. I mean, people are dropping out left and right as it seemed, which is kind of odd. We don't usually see that too often unless it's for injury reasons most of the time, but. Hey, the landscape of some of these All-Star games are changing. So we do have a lot of replacements. We have some people who probably should have been selected to the All-Star game, but weren't for some random reason. And I think we'll just kind of go with the most obvious one that's been causing a lot of controversy right now. We have Jacob Mizorowski for the Brewers. So he was selected, I believe, for Matthew Boyd, who is a pitcher for the Cubs. Jacob Mizorowski, really young rookie, has only really played 5 games, I believe, in the MLB, but he's done really well. I mean, he's had one of the best starting pitcher rounds going on here as a young rookie coming up. But there was someone else who, or really two people, and for us as Phillies fans, these guys are really close to us. Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez were not even really invited. They kind of just put up Jacob Mizorowski into this role. Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez have been doing really well for the Phillies, and for them to not really get a selection at all was kind of surprising, especially to a lot of the other Phillies players. Now there is some context to this. Ranger Suarez had recently just pitched. He pitched the other day, Jake, if I'm right, or he pitched either the other day,
On
2 days
yesterday,
ago.
Friday. Yes, Friday. Yep.
So then, and Christopher Sanchez is actually slated to pitch Sunday, which would be tomorrow. And the MLB, if they wanted them to be selected, they would have to pitch at least one inning in the All-Star game. Now, for Ranger, it wouldn't be too bad, but for Christopher Sanchez to go with only like a day of rest in between those, that's kind of a lot to ask just to pitch one inning in an All-Star game, especially after you pitch a full game on 2 days before. So they mentioned that they didn't really want to pitch in there, but. I think a lot of people are kind of getting mixed up. Well, why does it matter if they didn't really want to pitch? It's kind of just the recognition that the players deserve. I mean, I think for the MLB All-Star Game is about recognizing the best players in the MLB right now. And when you have Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez, who are both pitching really well, and they're not selected at all, that kind of uh, you kind of construe the game. Oh, well, they can't pitch, so we're not going to select them. It's about kind of having the honor most of all. And this isn't a sting at like Jacob Mizorowski at all. He's pitched really well. It's just kind of odd to have someone who's only pitched 5 games in the MLB be recognized as an all-star, especially over guys who are pitching really well. Now, if they probably would have um, had Christopher Sanchez or Ranger Suarez selected, and then Jacob Mizorowski replaced one of them. Okay, that probably would have gone over a little bit better.
Yeah, better taste in everyone's mouth there. Sam, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it's very important too for people to understand. Each team has to have at least one representative to the All-Star game. There has been some controversy because Yusei Kikuchi was just replaced. He was the only Angels representative. Was replaced yesterday, actually, so they have no one. But at least there's been that universal kind of rule where each team has to have at least one guy. So sometimes that kind of is a good thing because it limits, these great teams from sending all of these different guys because these teams have to send at least one player, either a pitcher or a hitter. But in the same light, I think you bring up a great point. I think because again, nothing to take away from Jacob Mizorowski. Struck out 12 Dodgers the other day. That the most potent lineup in the game has been electric and is great for the game. I'm going to be tuned in to watch him pitch against these incredible American League batters, but it's about the process. You look at the statistics from Sanchez and Suarez being up at the top for a lot of pitcher statistical categories. So just puzzling why they weren't one of the first reserves, because then again the whole starts and circumstances and stuff, very difficult to put them in as a replacement. They were going to be put in as a replacement anyways.
I just wanted to mention, I agree with both of you here. I agree that, it's hard to say if Sanchez and Ranger would have pitched at all because of their situations. But I also agree with Jake on saying, and you, Sam, getting the invite, period, is the accolade. You know, Zach Wheeler, we all know, should be one of the, and I think is one of the front runners for Cy Young in the NFL right now. Or not the NFL, I'm sorry, the NL right now. Getting that accolade, saying, here's your invite, like Wheeler did, he politely declined. He wants to stay rested and well amped up for the second half of the season. Great, fine. That's what you do with Ranger and Sanchez. Not saying this from a Phillies fan perspective, but saying it from a general perspective. If it was Paul Skeens or if it was somebody else, like from any other team who should have been invited, no matter their situation, but wasn't even looked at, I just feel like, I don't know. And again, like you said, Jacob has, Mizorowski, I believe I'm saying that right, is having his 5 starts have proven why he deserves to be called up in the show, right? He's had incredible outings, and he's got a great future behind him. It's hard to see how a player with only 5 games under his belt can be said statistically compared to other guys. Yes, you are chosen without question above these guys. Now, again, I don't think they made a bad choice. He's a great pitcher. He deserves to be recognized. But to have him on reserves rather than a first choice, I think would have been a better, for lack of better terms, political game for the MLB. To appease everybody.
Yeah, Pete, I agree. But the thing is, also Christopher Sanchez, if he would have made the All-Star game, he would have won. He would have earned $50,000. And the Phillies actually did recognize that and did give him the 50,000, which good for the Phillies for doing that and making that right. That was probably one of the bigger snubs that we've had. We could also talk about, I guess that we could talk about another Philly, Trey Turner. I don't mean to make this into a Phillies episode, of course,
I
much
have
as
a
I
few
love
other
that.
I have a few other names that I have down here, Sam. So we could get to those. But first, yeah, Trey Turner. I mean, again, the NL hits leader. Much better kind of bounce back. I think this has kind of been his best start to a season as a Philly since he signed the contract. Been stealing more bases, which everyone wanted him to kind of do in the off season. So, and his defense, I think that's been the biggest thing. His defense, past few years, negative defensive run save. This year, he went, over a month without committing an error at the position. Was pretty sure-handed over there for a good period of time. So, yeah, that one, stings. I'd say probably the pitchers a little bit more so. He's right there. He's right there, I think, with Ellie De La Cruz and Francisco Lindor, who's having a little bit of a down year to his standards. But there's some other really great talent, some other pitching talent. We're all kind of picking at straws here and kind of on our sides with the fandom, but disappointed for Trey with kind of the season that he's having, not being recognized.
Especially like being a fan, you want to see your hometown guys like go into it. But I mean, I think the real difference was, I mean, like you said, he was the hits leader. He probably has a 50 point average above Francisco Lindor and Ellie De La Cruz. He's probably also on fielding. He's probably a little bit better, I would say, than Ellie De La Cruz, especially this season. Maybe on par with Francisco Lindor. I think they both, Ellie De La Cruz and Lindor, at the time of their selection, I think they only had six more home runs than him. Which, if we're only just looking like stat by stat, okay. But I think just overall, looking at Trey Turner, overall, that one was kind of one that hurt. But Jake, you said you had a couple more ideas. Who you think got snubbed? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to keep it in the National League East for my next one. Juan Soto. I think, of course, he got off to a slow start to the season, but the past month and a half, returned to form at the plate for this Mets team that had a losing stretch. They're right now dead even with the Phillies at the top of the National League East at the time of recording, and he's been a main reason why. He's started to come around with the plate. Of course, he's not going to be a great fielder, but that bat, that patience, not only helping himself in the lineup, drawing more walks, getting on base more, but also mashing, continuing to hit home runs. I think he's up to 16 or 17 now on the season. I have a fact check on that, but I think he's one that you're talking about the reserves, maybe not an all-star starter, but someone that you can put in there. And Seiya Suzuki for the Cubs. I know they already have Kyle Tucker. I know Pete Crow Armstrong has been a revelation and is starting in the outfield as well, but Seiya Suzuki's a big bopper right behind him and has led the National League in RBIs, RBI leader in both leagues. I think over a 260 average with 20 plus home runs. So I think he's another one. Two guys in the outfield in the National League that you can kind of look towards that. They were having all-star caliber seasons that we're talking about snubs just left off the list.
Jake, I'll give you another one from the Cubs here. I'm kind of looking at some lists, and a lot of them make sense here too. Michael Bush, another one for the Cubs. I mean, he's been great for the Cubs, like at first base. A nice pickup from the Dodgers, who already had Freddie Freeman, wasn't being utilized a lot. They picked him up, and he's been really great for this Cubs team. Another one that I don't even know why I didn't even think about this one. Drake Baldwin, catcher for the Braves. I mean, he's been a really nice young rookie to see kind of develop, and he's been in the top of NL Rookie of the Year voting so far. So. You know, and we can go back and forth on this, but I think the thing is, we're always going to see snubs. We're always going to kind of scratch our head. Um, but I think it just as the fans in general, we just have to recognize, recognize real, kind of just recognize who those real players are, who those top in the MLB are. And for those who do make it to the All-Star game, it's a great honor. And we definitely don't want to bash them. They are there's a reason why they're in this All-Star game. They're one of the best players in the world to play the game of baseball. But everyone's gonna have their opinions, and we can go back and forth. But the All-Star game is always kind of something special to watch, especially for the MLB. So we'll take everything with a grain of salt and still kind of enjoy it for what it is. One more thing before I continue, I want to talk about something that real crazy that's been happening in the MLB, and his name is the Big Dumper, Raleigh. Um, the home run derby is coming up, and I mean the way he's been smashing the ball, 38 home runs right now. He is currently I believe one away from tying the record before the All-Star break. Believe the record's 39 home runs before the All-Star break, held by Barry Bonds, the home run man himself. And I believe they still play. I believe they play Sunday. Sunday's the last game to for him to kind of tie that record or even overtake that record. And I mean, I've seen Cal Raleigh hit 2 home runs in a game. I've seen him hit 3 home runs a game. So, uh, Jake, what do you think about the way Big Dumper's been smashing the ball?
Hey, Sam, I'm going to say what you just said. Real recognizes real, my brother. I mean, Cal Raleigh, Cal Raleigh, what a start to the first half of the year. Can't get over Sam said that. But but the point is, I mean, Cal Raleigh, and he's doing it at such a premium position at catcher. I think that's one of the most, astounding things as well. The last time we've seen a catcher really hit for this kind of power and have this kind of offensive output. I mean, you look at guys like J.T. William Contreras, kind of a similar, like, power hitting catcher that's going to bat 2-3 in your lineup. J.T. was more of a do-it-all athlete in his prime. Is kind of on the back half of that now, but really haven't seen this kind of power from the catching position. Piazza, I would say. I mean, maybe, again, Przinsky, you got some of these guys, but he is a pure. Yeah, Perez, yeah, I guess he's kind of the last one in his prime as well, talking about a pure power-hitting catcher that you were batting, 3-4 in your lineup, and that is, I mean, really, he is an engine for this, Mariners team that goes through their struggles on offense with Julio Rodriguez struggling at times. The depth in their lineup has been questioned, but what has been unquestioned has been Cal Raleigh's performance, and, at Safeco too. I mean, that's such a pitcher-friendly ballpark that he's mashing these home runs in as well is quite a sight to see, and it's super excited to see because the home run derby is a whole kind of different element where we saw a guy like Alec Boehm, who really not a huge home run hitter, made it to the final. So it's kind of a different format as opposed to a regular game, but excited for that, excited for the home run chase, and kind of a new, not a breath of fresh air because everyone loves Ohtani, Judge, but a different face, a different player into the mix that is having an incredible season, which is great to see and great for the game as well. Speaking of the High Council here on the podcast, and that is Sir Justin Reedhammer. Sir Justin Reedhammer, we are putting the microphone in your hands, or the microphone you have, to go over some GMs in the NFL that you think, up to some debate here we might have, but you think are the best in the league. Take it away, Justin.
Thank you, Jacob. This is a topic that I have been very excited to talk about for a long time. I brought this up like a few months ago, I think, and at the time I was like, "Oh, this is going to be an easy episode to research. This will be a piece of cake. We'll just get in, talk about this. It'll be like one of those off-season things that's kind of fun." And then I started researching it, and I realized, this is not like researching a draft where you can find a bunch of mock drafts of everybody. Like there was nothing on this. Like nobody ever had an article saying like, oh, these are the best JMs or anything. There was nothing like that. So I had to fly completely blind here and make up my own criteria. So I might as well go ahead and tell you guys what that criteria is before I get into who I think the best GMs are. So first things first, I started with longevity. If you were only a GM for a few years, then there's probably a reason. It's probably because your team had a bad GM, they fired him, and they just hired you. So you didn't have long enough to, make the list. I'm sorry. So I set the cutoff at 2020 or before. So if you came in at 2020 or after, you didn't make the list, and surprisingly, that eliminated half the league. So that says something. But yeah, then I went off of sort of the win percentage of the team over the last 5 years. This, of course, the GM builds the team, so if the team's winning, they're doing something right. So that was kind of the philosophy there. I also, of course, went off of the things that they do more specifically, like trades, signings, the draft choices that they're making, as well as, of course, the way that they're managing the team's salary cap. And then finally, I also a little bit looked into the way that the team finished or some of the accolades of the individual players because they also play a big role in that too. And if your team's winning the Super Bowl, the GM's probably doing something right too. So without further ado, let's get into my top 5 list here. And I will say I don't think any of these are surprising, and I think that's a good thing. So I think I did a good job. So let's see what you think, though. At number five, at number five, I have John Litch of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jason Litch, and they also have very similar last names. Yes, but their whip percentage since 2020 is about 60%. He made selections such as Tristan Wirfs, Anthony Whitfield, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, and of course he signed quarterback Tom Brady, who won him a Super Bowl in 2020. Their cap space looks pretty good for the next few seasons. So I think that at number five, I have Jason Litch of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
When we talk about all the criteria you talked about, Justin, I think it's a good spot for him. The Buccaneers haven't been this huge blowout team where they're all eyes on them and they're going to go through a playoff sweep, but they're deceptively good in the playoffs and they're deceptively good throughout the regular season. They keep their record at an honest number, and they're worth mentioning. You guys got guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans going to get Tom Brady, and Rob Gronkowski was huge for that Super Bowl run. You talk about guys like going to get Baker Mayfield after that happened, and everyone was questioning, oh, is Baker going to do any good in Tampa? I remember that. I remember that offseason where he was having such a rough time in the offseason in OTAs, and then he turned out to. I think he's doing pretty well down there, for that team. So I agree, they're doing well with cap space. I think that it'll be really interesting to see where they go when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin retire or go to new teams. Both those guys are getting a little bit older, so it'll be interesting to see. Prayerfully, hopefully, if he's still there as their GM, which I do think he will be, unless something catastrophic happens, what he does. But I think it's a good spot for number five, an honest team, a good team, but not some team that's like super like juggernaut type.
They're an honest team. They don't deceive you, right, Peter? I agree. No, I think it's a great spot. Something that Peter and Justin kind of alluded to with the whole Tom Brady situation. I mean, when do you get you can, again, really easily make the case he's the greatest quarterback ever. I know Justin does not like to make that case or hear that case quite often. But when he comes in, they have to reshape the roster for him. They go win the Super Bowl. Then he leaves shortly thereafter, and they're still in contention. Of course, that's part of the bad division that they're in, but that's also great foundation that they had with the drafting. They had young players on that team. We just saw a quarterback who I will not name leave a team that invested so much in him, and then they're in a rough spot having to clean up the pieces. The Bucs didn't do that. They brought in Baker Mayfield. They still had these great veterans like Evans, like Godwin, who Evans, again, you can still make a good case. He's a top 15, receiver in the game. So, I mean, yeah, I fully agree with this number 5 ranking.
All right, let's move to number 4, which Peter mentioned juggernaut. I don't know if there is a bigger juggernaut than this team right now. I'm talking about Brett Veach of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, it's pretty clear why I put them on the list. They have the highest win percentage in the last 5 years of anybody in the league, 78.6%. He made draft choices such as Patrick Mahomes, Lazarius Sneed, Nick Bolton. The cap space is looking pretty good for them, sitting around 10 to 30 mil in the next year or two. And, of course, they've appeared in 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls and have won 2 of those Super Bowls. And, of course, Patrick Mahomes won the MVP in 2022. So, for that reason, for all those reasons, for creating a dynasty basically the second he walked in, I think we have to put him on this list at number 4.
Thank goodness I don't have to talk about the Chiefs team because, we handled them. But, I'm surprised he's not higher on the list, to be honest. I'm a little surprised he's not number 3 or number 2 on that list. Because, like you said, Justin, he's been making big moves ever since he walked in that door. And he, like you said, with the Buccaneers GM, he walked in there and he got a Super Bowl. And then he got another one. And then he's been to 4, And he's drafting, in my opinion, fairly well. Guys like Xavier Worthy was a great draft pick. And it's interesting because you don't see the Chiefs making too many trades in the regular season or even in the off season. Maybe guys here and there on the line or on the defensive line, but you don't see big name trades. Like you don't see them going and trading away like a cornerback for another cornerback, or you don't see them trading away a wide receiver, a buttload of picks for a guy like Jamar Chase. You got guys that are like, it's almost like the Chiefs want to build from the ground up, and I mean, he definitely deserves to be on the list. All I can say is I'm just surprised he's not a little higher with what all they have done, and especially, and again, shout out to Andy Reid. Like his coaching has been phenomenal, and the defensive coordinator. Forgive me, I forget what his full
Steve
name is.
Spagnuolo.
Yes,
Spagnuolo,
Steve
yeah.
Spagnuolo. Thank you. Those two guys have been phenomenal. Like I will fully admit that. I will I'll admit it. They've been phenomenal on the Chiefs. So I'm a little surprised he's not higher on that list, but he definitely deserves to be on the list.
Yeah, before I go, Justin, what was, I guess, the reason that you put them here at 4, maybe? Is there something, like you mentioned, the whole player accolades and stuff, of course, Mahomes and Kelsey, but outside of that, not a ton else of that.
Yeah, so I guess the reason why I sat him here at 4 versus the 3 that I have ahead of him is because he kind of came in and drafted probably the greatest quarterback of our generation, and then sat back and watched the rest happen. He had Andy Reid as as the head coach. He's got Steve Spagnuolo, one of the greatest defensive coordinators I've ever seen. So he's had a lot sort of given to him by chance, I would say. So, and maybe some of that's good decisions by the owner too. The owner deserves some props here, but they've built a great dynasty. He does maintain that dynasty, but I think that when it comes to maneuvering some of these pieces, the guys ahead have had to work with less and have gotten as much, if not more, out of what they've had. If not as much Super Bowl success, more success in other areas.
Okay. So he's docked for kicking his legs up and eating popcorn and watching along with the. I appreciate the explanation because like Peter, I mean the success speaks for itself. I think some other names drafted: Isaiah Pacheco, Rashid Rice. These are and something else with the draft pick. They're picking 29 that they're picking at the end of the first round because of the team's success, and these first round players are instant impact players from day one. That's kind of the culture that they've built. Top of the draft teams, that's not happening. So I think that's the kind of foundation that we've seen, the sustainability we've seen with this team. Of course, when you have a once in a generation type quarterback, you're not going to lose a lot, but when you have that foundation, especially on defense, I think that's been such a marvel that we've seen has been at times when that offense is not rolling, that defense with guys they picked up undrafted, guys that they have worked along, that the coaching staff that Peter laid out as kind of put together. But again, a lot of those guys were found and picked out late in the draft, picked up, off the practice squad kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know when they're going to slow down. Maybe year or two, these guys are getting older, but, the way that they find guys in the draft is pretty remarkable.
Well, many think that the next team to slow them down is actually the team I'm about to mention right now. I'm talking about Eric DaCosta of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens have had a 64% win percentage since 2020. Very, very good. This guy has drafted the likes of Patrick Queen, J.K. Dobbins, Justin Matabuke, Isaiah Likely, Tyler Linderbaum. The list goes on. I gotta say, he probably has some of the most draft choices on here. It's pretty remarkable. The cap situation, they're looking at around 15 mil plus every year, which is fantastic. He signed Derrick Henry last season, and that ended up being a fantastic signing. And of course, Lamar Jackson ended up winning the 2023 NFL MVP. Many thought that he also deserved to win the 2024 NFL MVP. They just really haven't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs. Although a little piece here, I didn't mention that he drafted Lamar Jackson because he did not draft Lamar Jackson. He actually started in 2019.
The Ravens, I want to make a point I went to what you said. The Ravens are picking up steam, and it seems more and more by the season they're picking up the steam that's headed in the right direction for them as a team. Last year I think was a big eye opener for a lot of fans to say, "Oh, wait, maybe the Ravens might be a contender in the AFC in the near future." Um, I feel like the Ravens have always been, well, in recent times, have been one of those good teams in the AFC. They've been good. It's been a battle between the Ravens and the Steelers, and then the Bengals jumped in there a couple times here and there. It. I'm trying to rational. I'm trying to rationalize here because you said they drafted Lamar in 2019, so it doesn't count for this
2018.
GM. Oh, 2018. Thank you for this GM. What are some of the other reasons that you had this GM, other than obviously picking up Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers and all those other guys? What are you looking at here for this GM?
I was really impressed, honestly, by some of the cap management that he's had because he has some of these, top guys. We're talking Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, some of the best guys in the league, and yet they still have 15 mil left in the cap this year, 14 projected next year. The following year, 60 mil projected. So that honestly is quite impressive, and that's why I think I landed him at number three.
Yeah, I mean, cap space has definitely been an advantage for the Ravens, and that's why they are able to pursue players like Derrick Henry and keep guys on payroll like Lamar Jackson without any kind of questions whatsoever. Um, I think, and I might be the only one who thinks this. I think your number three, number four with the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think you could be interchanging on this list, just depending on as the listener's perspective, as a viewer's perspective. Like, I think they're interchangeable. I don't disagree with it. I'm not saying you're wrong with number three. I like it. I think it's a good team. I think it's a team that will be good in the future as well. I think, in the current standpoint of this recording, three and four could be interchangeable, but I like where you have it.
Yeah, I think something out, kind of a counterpoint to that, Peter. We can't get a little too success bias here. A little too success bias, of course. You got that with the Chiefs, of course. But to the Ravens' point, I think something been thinking about while we've been talking here about this has been the identity that they have built. That Eric DaCosta and this Ravens regime has built. That the Chiefs have kind of built their identity around Patrick Mahomes and the top end talent. But the Ravens, a ground and pound game on offense, they are going to punch in the mouth on the football field. That's what they're going to do offensively and defensively, and they have really built that identity, and he's done that around Lamar Jackson, around, of course, you could say what you want about the receivers that he's drafted and kind of tried to pick up for Lamar, but, he's built that, really a top defensive unit year in and year out, and built that identity through his draft picks, through these veteran free agent signings that he's brought in. So, yeah, I'm really liking the list, Justin. I think you've got a good kind of theme, a good line of thing, and this is a good identity pick. He is built, while the success hasn't come at the end of the road, at the end of the yellow brick road, as you would say, but, he's building the foundation. He has, the blueprint is there. The Ravens way is there, and he is bringing in players that fit that identity, and it's leading to wins in the regular season and success.
Yeah, you talk about identity. Well, the next guy I have on this list drafted this team's identity with his first selection in 2018. I'm talking about Brandon Beane of the Buffalo Bills, who drafted Josh Allen in 2018, and I think you can argue that that is the entire identity of the entire city of Buffalo. Of course, they've had the second best win percentage since 2020 at 73.5%. Along with Josh Allen, he has also drafted guys like Gabe Davis, Greg Rousseau, Khalil Shakir, James Cook, Christian Benford, as well as many, many others. And of course, a notable trade in 2020 was to trade for Stephon Diggs, which actually aligned greatly with Josh Allen's meteoric rise. Their cap has been a little less good, which is actually why he ends up on number 2 on this list. I can get to that later when I explain number 1. But he also had the 2024 MVP in Josh Allen, of course. They've made AFC Championship twice in the last 5 years. They've been in the divisional round the other 3 years. It's been, a tough road for the Bills in the playoffs, but in the regular season, they've been one of the best teams in the league, and a lot of that is because of Brandon Beane's roster building and the way that he manages the cap.
I really like this placement. The Bills have, like you said, they've built a franchise in Josh Allen. I don't think you can really dispute that statement. I think that Josh Allen, I just think that the mold of the Buffalo Bills is Josh Allen, and drafting guys like Gabe Davis, who saw success with the Bills when he was with Buffalo, and Stephon Diggs, not only providing for the Bills, but also helping Josh Allen as a younger guy than Stephon is grow into the quarterback he is. I think that the Bills, and like you mentioned, the playoff troubles at the end of the road, they're maybe one or two steps away from securing that AFC Championship victory. I think one of those things being home field advantage would be really nice for them to have. For the mentality and for every, we all know what home field advantage does in a championship game. It's unmatched, especially in Buffalo, because Buffalo fans they're absolutely insane. They're a great fan base, but I think that like you said, the cap space could be managed a little bit better. I think it's hard when you're trying to pay guys like Josh Allen, and you're trying to pay guys like when you had other defensive players on that line that you had that were really good. You have Joey Bosa now this year, which I think will be a really nice output on the defensive line. So I think that in all reality, this is a good placement for this GM. He's proven that he can draft pretty well. He's proven that he can add and trade for elements when he needs to. He has that MVP win in Josh Allen. He has playoff records to show that they can get out of that slump that they were in a couple of years ago where they weren't even hitting the playoffs. And I think I'm hoping for this for you, Justin. I'm hoping for this for my uncle who's a Bills fan. And just to not see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again for another year. I'm hoping that this is the year that they just beat that slump. I want to see it happen. I'd love to see it happen. And I think that this GM can take them where the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot. I think as well, going back to a point Justin brought up in his criteria, the whole where was the team when he took over, I think is a big point. And of course, trying to put Josh Allen to the side for a second, it's very hard to, ignore, his kind of, as Justin put it, meteoric rise to stardom for this team. But, you've got kind of a middling roster of the Tyrod Taylor and, no disrespect to Tyrod Taylor and E.J. Manuel and kind of the quarterback play, and they had some good players on that team, but again, in a division with the Patriots at the time, the Jets and Dolphins, the way that they were playing, they needed that step, and Brandon B took that step, took that risk, drafting Josh Allen with those questions out of Wyoming, and it paid dividends. He's taken risk necessary, and while the cap has been, a little bit of a minor casualty of these kinds of signings and trades with the Diggs, with bringing in Von Miller, paying him for some veteran leadership that, now retire, kind of moving on from that and dealing with that. But the risks, I think that's something that we haven't touched on enough with these guys. Of course, with the Chiefs kicking the feet up with the popcorn, it's you get Mahomes, you have these other Hall of Fame coaches already in place, but you got to take risks as a general manager, and Brandon B the paying off for Buffalo in a big way.
Yeah, another little thing I like about Brandon Beane is that he's not afraid to tell the radio announcers what it is, He's a good guy like that. But number one, I know you guys were waiting to hear it, so I'll just let you have it. Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles. They have actually had one of the lower win percentages in the last 5 years of the guys I've mentioned, only 62%. But with draft choices like Jalen Hurts, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Devontae Smith, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, the list goes on there. Signings like Saquon Barkley, Zach Bond, cap management, putting you guys around 30 million, 15 million, 90 million the next few years. And of course, 2 Super Bowl appearances with 1 Super Bowl championship just this last season put Howie Roseman over the edge as the number one GM of the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you just talked about being a risk taker in the Bills GM, right? And I don't want to call trading for Saquon a risk or acquiring
I
Saquon a
wouldn't call
risk,
that a risk.
Yeah.
but it's easy to say that Saquon was injured 3 times in 3 seasons with the Giants. You know, he had a lot of leg injuries, and so there's a little risk there. But it's Saquon, so we all know that he's a monster with the right line. But I mean, you talk about the drafting, and in recent years, the drafting has gone from drafting idiots like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to drafting guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, who are smoking out generational talents in their rookie seasons. I mean, when now that it's coming to my head, the tackle that Cooper DeJean had on Derrick Henry in the Ravens Eagles game that went absolutely electric, where Cooper DeJean planted Henry into the ground like no man has ever done before. You know, it's just I like the guts of Howie Roseman trusting in his coaching staff, trusting in guys like Jeff Stoutland, trusting in guys like Vic Fangio, trusting in guys like Nick Sirianni, who had a lot of heat around himself this season itself. I mean, and he goes out there and he takes risks. He's not afraid to extend players, and it's nice to see that players are not afraid to take pay cuts in order to keep other players there. You know, and I think that he's built throughout these last few seasons a really good team chemistry. You know, and I think that his team has chemistry that you don't see in many teams. I see the Bills have a lot of great chemistry. The Eagles have a lot of great chemistry, but you don't see that kind of like fight in many other teams that like want their guys to stay their guys, you know.
Yeah, cue the many men video that circulates Twitter every time Howie Roseman is on the clock, and teams there's an APB out in the draft. Do not let Howie Roseman get this player that falls. Jahad Campbell, the latest example, the linebacker out of Alabama. But I mean, yeah, it just goes to show, and I think something that kind of goes under the radar too with Howie Roseman is the contract restructuring, and that's Justin bringing up the cap management. That's how he's been able to make these signings with Saquon, be able to move on from guys because he's restructuring deals. He has that open communication with the players, like, hey, this is the vision that we have. Hey, can we just tweak your contract a little bit, move some millions around, if you will, so that we can get this addition, that we can fit in this piece, or even a year down the line say, hey, can you just adjust? Maybe this is not something that'll be happening in this season upcoming, but maybe a few years down the line when we have this type of situation, guys are buying in. He has built that reputation through the success, he's down there on the sidelines with the team too. I think that's another thing that sometimes we discredit. You want the GM to be not necessarily a part of the coaching staff, but you want them invested in the team. You want to see them in the locker room with the cigar in their mouth after they win a big game and are high-fiving player. I think that shows a connection that sometimes gets lost. You just have guys suited up Jerry Jones style, Death Star up there in the booth. There's a little bit of a loss of the contract signing. I think that's a big part of it too, that aside from the draft steals, aside from the trades and the big names that he's brought in, but that communication and that connection that I think lands at number one, and these guys on this list are doing that to some extent.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say, much like the Buffalo Bills GM, he's very invested in the players, not only in their success but in their lives too. In their and however much the personal lives the players care to share, he's invested. I mean, and you saw videos of Brandon Graham and those guys picking him up and hugging him on the sidelines, like you said, Jake. And the restructuring of the contracts allowed for us to bring guys like Zach Bond back and Dallas Goedert back. I know there's a huge question mark on his head in the offseason, whether he was going to be traded, brought back, whatever. But I think that as a GM collective in these top five, I think that we'd see a lot more success out of GMs if they took example from guys like Howie Roseman and the Buffalo Bills GMs, where they're not just sitting like Jerry Jones up in his luxury suite, forgetting where he is half the time.
Other GMs like that. That's just who that's just who I thought of first and foremost, because I always pan to him in the game like 15 times in the game, just sitting there pissed off, you know.
But be active in your team would be my advice to any kind of GMs. Be active with your team. Have those hard conversations, and be willing to say, you know what, it's been a great run, but if you're not willing to move, we have to move on from you. You know, because you have to have the betterment of the longevity of your team in the front of your mind.
Justin, what do you think about Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM? He was one that I was looking at a little bit of a list, probably not as much research as you put into this, but just looking around, he's been around 2018, had some of course no first round wide receivers, the anti-Packers there, but he's brought in the trades, the Pro Bowlers, the transition, of course, say what the Packers way from Rodgers to Love. But haven't had as much postseason success. But minus that, I mean, I think he's done a great job. Is he that sixth guy? Is he on that outside looking in?
Yeah, he was one of those guys who was definitely on the outside looking in. It was a pretty tough battle for the fifth spot. I would say the first four were pretty locked in, but the fifth spot was like, I don't know what to do, and I kind of had to break the tie with a combination of the guys that they were getting through the draft and free agency, as well as how they're managing the cap. And his cap management's been good. It's kind of mid-tier cap management, but mostly it was the guys that he's bringing in. He's brought in Jordan Love and Jair Alexander, but outside of that, I wouldn't say there were huge guys that they've brought in. They haven't been largely successful in the playoffs, so because of those reasons, I had him on the outside.
He's been around, but hasn't gotten the team over that. Brought in, Josh Jacobs, but it's not like he's doing, the whole foundation.
Yeah, he's not like Derrick Henry.
Talking about, yeah. Peter, anything else? Anything else, Peter? No. Peter's backing off, and so are we for this episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. We'll see how those GMs pan out. Check out the All-Star Game, too, as Sam mentioned earlier. See some great talent. Some snubs that didn't make it, but some great players, as mentioned, that are participating. So check that out, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Keep tuned in on YouTube for future episodes.